It's been a little too cold to do really any exterior work, so I figured it'd be the perfect time for some interior work. And just so you know, I have no idea what I'm doing. The extent of my upholstery knowledge ends here. Well, starts and ends here. But I can't make the exterior look cool and leave the interior looking like this. All right, now that I've got all the vinyl, it's time to start tearing apart the interior. I'm gonna start tearing out the back seat because I don't know how long this is gonna take and I don't need these to drive the car. So, all right, these have a little tab here that you pull to bring this seat forward. And then the rear seats appear to have a mount here and a mount here. That's pretty easy. Oh, actually, even easier. This doesn't need to come off. There's those. Guess we'll put this one back. More power on these ones. So let me go grab a bigger wrench. All right, I've got a bigger wrench now. Just break them free with this. Then we'll use our battery ratchet to undo them the rest of the way. Hopefully that's all we need. Look at that. All right, that seat's out now. Now for the bigger one. I think what I'll do is just undo this bolt right here for the seat belt, and then I'll worry about getting it out of the chair after, if I even have to. It's so dirty down here. But looks like I'm gonna be going and picking up a bigger Torx bit. All right, now that I've got my back seat torn out of the car, I think the first step is to take some of this hardware off, or at least some of the plastic pieces. There's zippers on the backs of these, tucked away in here. All right. All right, we've got one cover off of the seat. Now I just gotta repeat the process for the rest of them. All right, so now that all these seat covers are off, I'm gonna use this as a template. So I'm basically gonna just cut all along these seams and then mark out each individual piece. I'm gonna take some photos just to make sure I don't mess anything up. As long as I can take this apart clean, I can hopefully use every single shape here on my template, on my new vinyl. What the f did I get myself into? Go. Now I've got to get this bar out of here. All right, that unclips pretty easy. I think before I get too ahead of myself, I'll get this plastic piece off as well. There we go. All right, that wasn't too bad. Two bottoms are off, one of the tops is off. Now I just have to get the larger of the two tops, which I don't think is gonna be really any different than this one because it's got the same exact, well, I lied, it's got a seatbelt in the center. All right, let's figure that one out now. Let's tackle this seatbelt area first. Also locked up, and I'm not sure why. I guess while we're up here, we'll pop all these out. That one is now on the other side of my garage, as well as that one. Bar in here. You really can't even see it that well. Yeah, see there's that bar in there. It's got to just unclip from that. Don't want to force it too much, but that works. These suck. Hopefully this one pulls off as easy as the other one. But I should address why it's not releasing. We'll worry about that another day. Disclaimer, I'm talking like I know what the I'm doing, but I do not know what the I'm doing. So if you're gonna try this at your own risk, I'm not responsible for you fucking your stuff up, but I am very responsible for me fucking my stuff up, so I'm gonna try not to. We've got all of our fabric off of our seats. Basically what I'm gonna do is lay out those other ones, take some pictures of them, just so I kind of have an idea of what's what. I think I'm gonna try to find a crayon so I can write on each one, like a different number on each one, so I kind of know what goes where, just to try to keep things organized. Then I'm gonna go find a seam ripper, that way I can just glide through that, cut the seams apart, and then hopefully, soon enough, transfer the cuts onto this vinyl. All right, next step, I gotta mark out all the different panels on here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think I'm gonna do like an X next to these. That way I just know that they're all from the same seat. I think I'm gonna reuse this material because it matches the rest of the car. I don't feel like changing the carpet. As much as it would be nice to like do this a cool color, I think that just keeping it black is gonna be safe. We're gonna keep it black. So now that I have all these panels marked out, the next step is to basically cut it apart. So I've got these two little tools. They're the same thing. One's a cheap one, one's a nicer one. It's a seam ripper. I think that's what it's called anyway. That's what it looks like. This sharp center, and once you get it in the stitch, it just glides right through. Again, no clue what the I'm talking about, so I'm just saying shit out loud. Also, I'm gonna take a picture of this for reference. There's no going back now. We have done it. We're officially doing this now. Also, looking at this, I can tell that these were stitched together first. These panels here, and then these side ones, and then this one, and then this was sewn into the rest of it. So that's kind of cool. All right. So that is all the pieces for one. All right, so this is all the pieces to one of them. So now I gotta figure out which colors I'm gonna do for which individual section. And then the lowers are gonna be a little bit different because I think I'm redoing all of the lower. The back I wanted to match the carpet in like the back of the car. The lowers, I don't want that carpet on the front. So I'm gonna do those ones a little bit differently. But I'm tired, so for now, I'm gonna call that a day, and then we'll see you tomorrow. All right, it is the next day or maybe a couple days later. I've lost track of time. We've got that one done, obviously. This one we're working on still. Got a couple more. Got to rip those apart. But I've got everything numbered. Got the other ones down there numbered as well. So we're ready to go. Once I get these seats ripped apart, then I can start moving to the next step, which is laying out all the templates on my new vinyl and then trying to figure out how to use a sewing machine. So time lapse for now. All right, I'm done cutting. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stacks of material. When I get back in here, I'm gonna start laying these pieces out as templates, cutting them on the vinyl and the foam. I also just came up with what I think is a really good idea. I've got a heat press for like pressing graphics on t-shirts. Areas like this that were folded over that are kind of like staying like that, it's gonna be kind of hard to trace. So I'm gonna lay this flat on my heat press, and that should press this perfectly flat. That way when I put this on the other fabric, I can get a really accurate trace, hopefully. I don't know how hot for how long, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it. It actually worked really well. I think that if I had a iron, like just a regular iron, it would be significantly better. I've run into a problem. I actually forgot entirely about these until just now. The headrests, they're glued and they're like in the bars. So my initial thought, I could just cut these out, separate that glue as best as I can, and then make new ones with these templates, so they'll be the same exact shape, but I'll make the bottom different so it can kind of wrap over and either Velcro or I can hand stitch it at the bottom. So yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is maybe just use the seam ripper and just pull these apart. That way I can save the shapes and then sew them back later, just changing up the way the bottom is. All right, well, hopefully this is easy and I don't ruin anything. It's not pretty, but we're gonna count that as a success. I'll figure out how to make up the difference in the foam that I lost on this one. I think we're good. I think we're gonna be okay. All right, so I'm coming up with the design right now. Basically, I just have this picture and I'm gonna draw in some different areas. This isn't my actual seats, this is just a stock photo of Ford Escape seats, but they're the exact same as these. I also have to keep in mind that the front seats are a little bit different. So if I want to match the look from the back seat to the front seats, I'm going to have to keep them somewhat coherent. All right, keep in mind this is just a rough sketch, so it's going to look ugly. So what I'm thinking is doing all of the centers. I think that's what I want to do, is just the outer sides brown, the middle here, which would count as like the inside of the chair. On the front seats, I want to do brown there, but all the headrests are going to be the same. And I want to do some kind of diamond stitching. All right, that's what I'm thinking. All right, so now that I have this mock-up drawn up, I can go cut my templates. And basically what I'm gonna do is find each individual piece based off my picture. I'll cut them and then mark on the back of them with a Sharpie the matching number and symbol that I did on the old material. I'm gonna lay the old material over top of the new material, just as like a rough outline, and then I'm gonna cut wide around it. And even though I'm only doing one seat at a time, I'm gonna trace them all out with their respective symbols and then cut them all out at once. That way I'm not tracing, cutting, I'm just doing it one time and then I'm done. But I'm gonna go find a not jumbo permanent marker. All right, there's one of the lower seats. All right, I'm just gonna cut these shapes away. That way I can roll this up and then move on to the brown. Cut all these out later. Now these ones I'm not doing any fancy stitching on, so I'm going to tighten them up a little bit just to save some more material. I'm not really worried that much about it, but I can get closer to the original shape on these ones because I'm not doing any pre-stitching before sewing the seats together. All right, you don't want to watch the whole thing. So once I get this done, I'll get back to you and we'll start cutting these apart. All right, I've got all these cut out now. And these don't have to be 100% perfect right now. When I do the final trim, I'm gonna actually hold these up to the original pieces just to make sure they're perfect, because the Sharpie's a little wide and so it's not gonna be super precise. So when I'm done cutting all these out, then we'll put them side by side with the original pieces and make sure that they're perfect. It's the next day. Actually, it's like a week later. I ran into a problem. I have made a drastic change in the entire car project, and I've changed the color that I'm painting the car. I'm not gonna say anything yet, but we went from very classy to a little bit more bold and obnoxious. Unfortunately, the purple that we had picked out is not gonna match for the interior. So we're switching up the color. I'll show you what that is right now. We are going with a two-tone brown now. So we're keeping the darker brown with the texture, and then I'm gonna do this more like light chocolatey brown for the inner parts of the seat, which does bum me out a little bit because I was kind of excited to do the purple. Not because I actually like purple, I just wore this kind of as like a joke. I was bummed because I wanted a bright color on the inside, but instead we're gonna go with this brown. But because I think it's gonna make the interior of the car a little more boring, I have another idea that I'm gonna do to spice up the interior a little bit. All that work I did, tracing and cutting out the purple, I have to redo on this brown now. Also, the brown that I picked out, they did not have a lot of, so I have like not enough material to make any mistakes. So this has to be perfect. All right, I've got them all traced out on this new brown here. Try to cut them as perfect as possible so they're exactly the same. And then I'm gonna spray the adhesive onto them and start gluing foam onto the back of these. Also, subscribe and follow along because I already have a new use for the purple for a completely different project that I didn't even think of until I was like, what the hell am I gonna use this purple for? And I'm like, duh, it's obvious. You'll see when it gets there. Subscribe so you don't miss that. All right, back to it. All the mid sections of the seats cut. I'm gonna worry about cutting the other stuff later because I'm not worried about it. I have to sew these, so I need this adhesive spray to dry on these for a little while anyways, and while I'm waiting for that stuff to dry, I'll cut the other. Now I'm gonna pin these to the original fabric and then cut them precise, exactly what the other ones are. Might take a little while to do this part, but I want them to be perfect. All right, we got that done. I changed it up a little bit, used my bodywork dollies to weigh everything down, just because the corners were like folded up a little bit and I wanted to make sure I got them as close as possible to the original size. I believe it's 1/4 inch foam. I've got one seat panel here. I have to glue these to the foam, cut the foam out, and stitch all these pieces together. I'm just gonna cut out some big squares around here and glue 4 panels at the same time. But since the markings are gonna be on the bottoms of these, I'm not gonna be able to see them. So I'm gonna try to keep each section together, and I'll write a little note on which symbol is underneath these. So I've got this sign here with a weight holding even pressure. Had to improvise here and on that corner. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm gonna start cutting this darker brown. Hopefully this works out and I didn't waste $40 on this can of spray adhesive. Well, after 30 minutes, no luck. I think temperature is probably our biggest enemy right now. Until these are glued down, I can't really move on from this step. I could try to apply heat to this, like with a heat gun, to activate this glue a little bit more, but I really don't want to risk damaging any of these cut pieces because, like I said, I don't have room to mess up. I think I'm just gonna have to wait for it to be warm out. I've thought about it for a second. I think what I'll do is I'll open the sewing machine box, get it set up, put the walking foot on and all the pieces that I need for this. And then I'll take a couple of the other pieces that I had, the scrap pieces from this, and try to do some practice stitching just to make sure when the time comes, I'm ready to go. All right, so I think this bench is gonna be where I'm gonna set up the sewing machine, mainly because it's adjustable, 1, 2, it's very sturdy. So like if the machine's vibrating, it's not gonna move so much. So I went with a lesser expensive sewing machine for a few reasons. 1, I don't know that I'm gonna do this a ton. I might, but I don't wanna spend a ton of money. If you know me, you know that I don't really care about money and I will spend it to get the best of the best. But for this particular video, I wanted it to be like a DIY job. So I figured this would be a more appropriate sewing machine for a DIY, seeing that it's only a couple $100. I don't actually know if this is gonna be good enough for what I'm doing. If it's not, then obviously at that point I will buy a nicer sewing machine that can do upholstery. But from what I looked up online, this is like the bare minimum or around the bare minimum of what you would need to do some type of vinyl upholstery. To help me out, one thing that you definitely need in upholstery, regardless of the sewing machine you have, is one of these. This is a walking foot. Next, I've got these nicer needles, these more durable leather needles. And I've got this polyester line. It is 8-ounce Tex 90. I didn't know what any of this meant before I started doing this, but based off the research that I did, this is like what you need for this type of upholstery if you want it to last, if you don't want it to pull through, which is also why I'm doing the foam, because it's another layer to keep these stitches from just pulling through. Also UV resistant, you want that for sure. So these don't weaken over time, especially sitting in the sun. Especially if you're gonna do anything that's like marine grade on boats, this is super necessary. All right, we've got a light there, so that means we've got power. So we're gonna load this guy up with some thread. I've got the thread loading off of that right there. All right, sorry for that horrible shot, but I've got our new needle set up in there. All right, so I've got a cut-off piece of each of the materials, and I'm just gonna try to run a path right up the middle of them. Something's not right. Well, we've already messed something up. Maybe I loaded that wrong. What's up? It is a new day. It is a touch warmer than it's been, so I'm really hoping that it's gonna be good enough to do the glue on these. The stuff I've been using, I'm gonna try it again. I also bought some upholstery specific stuff from our local hobby store. I think I'm gonna do it differently. It says that it needs to like spray both pieces, then let them tack up and then stick them together. So I'm gonna try that on one of them, and if it doesn't work, I'm just gonna try the other spray. I wish I could go back and film my learning curve of the sewing machine. It took me hours to figure it out, just trial and error. I kept messing stuff up. Turns out I needed a different walking foot than the one that I got because that one sucked. Right now, I'm gonna spray some of this adhesive stuff on the backs of these vinyls. Fingers crossed it sticks, and we can get to sewing later. Put some weight down on it. All right, now I've got to do 4 of those, so I think I'm a little more confident with it now. I think the weather and then doing it properly where I wait a second for it to tack up before I just put them on wet is the ticket there. These are the ones that I just glued. Some of the ends have lifted up, but most of them have stayed down. Realistically, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to hold the foam to it while I'm sewing everything together. That way nothing bunches up. I also cheated, bought a heat gun. I feel like I'm unlearning how to do it because this seemed like it's worse than the last one I just did. But like this one is good. These are solid. These are stuck to it. So I'm gonna cut these up and start to stitch right now. I gotta see if we can actually do it. All right, we've got our 4 panels, and all we're doing is stitching these side by side, and we'll just hope we're problem free. Yeah? All right, and that is 1 stitch done. But yeah, let's keep going. We got another piece to put onto this one. All right, there's another stitch done. We've almost got the lower part of the seat somewhat together, at least the part that you sit on. Look at that. That's a seat right there. I also just realized that I kind of got scammed. So the browns that were taped together, that I'm realizing now, were not the same browns. Same color, not the same kind of vinyl. One is textured and one is very, very smooth. Yeah, so there is a few mismatched textures. I don't think you'll notice it, especially once I put the stitching in, but come on. I also want to try to get this to lay flat, so I'm going to find something to put on top of it so I can get this to lay as flat as possible. That way when I go to stitch it, it's not trying to do its own thing. Kind of my mindset on this is as long as I make everything just a little smaller than what it is, then at least I can use like a heat gun and a steamer to kind of stretch the material a little bit to fit on the seats. I would rather it be a little too snug than a little too loose, because too loose, there's really no going back without redoing it. Too snug, I can stretch the material. There's a little bit of wiggle room with it being a little smaller, but I'm gonna try to get it as perfect as possible, just like the factory ones. All right, back to sewing. Now I don't love that. That did not line up well, even though it lined up well before the stitch. Yeah, I'm gonna rip these stitches out and do it again. This single seat ready to be stitched with our diamond. Basically, I just laid everything out with a weight on top of it to lay it as flat as possible. So what I'm gonna do now is try to figure out center point on both of these. That way I can line up my diamonds as best as possible, and then probably start experimenting with a couple different angles. This is like the most time consuming part. After this, it's just stitching all the panels back together. Once I'm done with this, there's gonna be a huge weight off my shoulders because this is the part where I'm still like not sure exactly how to do this. Once I get past this, everything else should be a walk in the park, I hope. All right, a few hours later, let me show you what I got. This was trial and error after trial and error. I first used this really thick chalk marker, and it was just not accurate at all. I tried using pencils, it wouldn't mark. I bought white thin pencils that are like designed for fabric marking. They didn't work. So I just like dug through our junk drawer and found this, I don't know, magical marker. And it worked really well. So let me show you what I got. I tested it on another piece to make sure it would wash off with water, and it does. So this is what we've got. So I basically made a center mark here, center of like this panel here, center mark, and I just picked here, went 2 inches over, and then drew a line from here to here, and then separated them about 1/4 inch apart. So I think it looks pretty good. I think there is like a little slant to them, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. I don't think you can really notice. I'm just being very picky. I'm gonna at least stitch it because I will feel so accomplished if I get at least one of these fully stitched. I'm just gonna do it and see how it goes. I'm not mad. I'm gonna keep going. This is gonna take forever, and I kind of already knew that, but we're just gonna keep running it, and yeah. It's definitely not great, but it's definitely not horrible. After like 45 minutes probably, we're done. There's obviously the back, and this is the front. Now it's not perfect, don't stare at it for too long. There are imperfections all over it. It also looks a little bit worse because the marker lines are still there. So when the marker lines disappear, they won't look as obvious, but there's some imperfections. I missed some lines, I didn't get straight. Sometimes when it hits these, where it hits the seams becomes the worst because it kind of pauses for a second, and then I gotta like adjust it and rotate it. But for the most part, everything went pretty smoothly. This area is pretty good, but that's cool. That's why we did the back seat first and the seat that I typically have down most of the time, just in case. But yeah, I'm not too disappointed with it. I know that there's plenty of room to progress from there. I actually like the diamond shape. I'm gonna try to stitch the edge material on here now and see if I can't almost put this thing back together. We are back another day and very close to being done. I have all of the diamond pattern stitched into the center sections of the back seats. Also started one of the edge pieces to make sure that I could figure it out, and we're good. I kind of figured it out. The next thing is just piecing all of the rest of the seat back together. This shouldn't take nearly as long as doing 60-some straight line stitches over all those seams. It's been a few days, reason being I haven't got to get out here because I got a new puppy. This is Rex, and Rex is joining me today in the garage because Mama's not home. So yeah, I'm gonna fire up the sewing machine and try to put these things back together. All right, so I'm using this seat as a template. So it's actually pretty obvious where the stitch lines are gonna be to line these up. So basically, this guy here lines up with the holes in the top. These holes, easy, right? And then you can tell, obviously this is gonna be where this one matches up with this piece here. And those bolts here line up with these holes. All right, it is not the worst. It could definitely be worse. I'm actually not too disappointed in this as my first attempt ever. I mean, there's obviously imperfections all over this thing, but it fits and I mean, other than this needing to be Velcroed down, I'm gonna take this off and do it again, but it's looking kind of okay. Well, I tried to get a really cinematic shot of the last stitch that I did, which was stitching basically the thin zipper all the way around it, which would have been a really cool shot had I clicked the record button, which I didn't. So yeah, show you where I'm at. Yeah, I just finished up stitching that zipper all the way around. So this one is together. Flip it inside out or outside out, and then try to put it on the lower part of the seat. Also, I kind of lied when I said I was done and gonna get a new sewing machine. I was kind of annoyed at how everything went, and I was sitting inside and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try it one more time. I'm gonna switch the needle and just gonna go until the thread breaks and binds up, and then I'm done. If it happens on the first stitch, I'm gonna just go back inside. And it didn't happen at all. I got really lucky with this one. There you go. There is the lower part of the seat right there. So that right there is one seat in my vehicle. Pretty cool. Pretty cool to see it come together. All right, new day, and hopefully the final day of this project. Got the sewing machine, new needle in it. It's working okay for now. This set of seats is done. So close to being done. I think I'm gonna take a break from doing the upholstery until I get a new machine for the front seats. But that's okay because the weather's warm enough now for me to do a bunch of the other shit that I've been needing to do. Basically just have to sew the whole perimeter to itself. That way I can flip it inside out. Then after doing 4 of these, I think I've gotten pretty good at this. I wanted to do a decorative stitch around like the edge, which would be the outer part, but this is just not the machine for that, unfortunately, but that's okay. All right, sewing machine is finally down. I got all of the Velcro hand stitched back into place. Done sewing. I really hope that I don't have to touch the sewing machine until I do the front seats, which I kind of have a new idea for the front seats. So I'm not 100% sure what my plan is yet. And I have never been more excited to clean the garage than I am currently. Hey. All right, hold on. I gotta go grab my dog who has escaped and is running away with foam. Boy, I'll beat your butt. Pen took this and just ran to the drive. All right. Well, got one. All right, it is time to install these seats. I just gotta clean up the car because it is an absolute mess. We'll do the big one just to get the big one out of the way. Now, as long as these lock into place, we're good. Now we just got to do the bottoms. We just decided to cut it out. Was not working, so looks fine now. Tools are put away. Seats are locked in place in the car. Seatbelt is cut. That's pretty much the project. I've completed one part of it. The next part is the front seats, but I don't want the front seats to look nearly as amateur as the back seats. I'm gonna wait until either I get a better sewing machine or a little bit more practice with the one I have. I also still have to do the headrests, but I'll do that when I do the front seats. I wanna jump onto a different project because I got a little bored of this one. Mix it up a little bit. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, this is what I'm doing. This is pretty much all I'm doing. Vehicle stuff, modifications, motorcycles, cars. So the further along we go, the crazier the builds are gonna get, the more custom the builds are gonna get. So I'm just doing my car to start. And then I got a couple projects that I'm kind of keeping on the down low just because there'll be surprises to those who have subscribed and followed along. So for now, be safe, get creative, and yeah, subscribe again, like this video, and we'll see you next time.